And hello, YouTube, and welcome to yet another episode of Chatting Shit. Not so spicy this month as you may have come to expect from me and my compatriots, but I mean, Firefly, maybe there's not as much spice that we can be running. Maybe there's only like 12 mons. But anyway, thank you for watching us. Thank you for continuing to tune in and watch our ramblings. Yeah, I'm not Matthew Brewer. I'm in fact Jan Solo 19, back again after a little time away. And this for this episode, whenever it may come out, I'm joined by some of my very favorite people from my faction Gym Division. We've decided to take over. So I'd like to introduce you all to Hawkeye, and also to Philly Jim Bob, otherwise known as Lord Quag himself, and to our youngest member, I believe, Callum Rigel Starlight. So thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me this evening.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
And, oh.
There goes Gemma.
I was absolutely waiting for that. Perfect.
You knew it was coming, right? You knew it was
that was
coming,
brilliant.
Always coming.
That was absolutely
Always
brilliant.
coming. So,
How you doing, boys? You all right?
pretty good. Thank you very much. I was about to say, my first question is usually about like when we do talk about spicy things, and again, it's not such a spicy episode, I don't think. But I always ask my guests about their spiciest moment. But actually, I'm going to just be a bit more vanilla this month and ask about how you feel the comparison from what we've just had, Nemesis Cup being perhaps a slightly more complicated cup, to what we now have in Firefly, which is perhaps more of a classic kind of Silph, straightforward typing type cup. How do you guys feel about that?
I'll go first, if that's all right.
I was waiting for one of you guys.
Of course, Captain.
I've loved Nemesis. Even when I was losing, I had a smile on my face. So, yeah, I really enjoyed Nemesis. Firefly does feel classic type in Silph. And I'm quite intrigued to see how many different people interpret certain things. So yeah, I've got my ideas. I don't want to give them all away because I might just encourage people to build my walls. But yeah, I'll give it a go. Yeah.
Brilliant. Callum, Alex, how about you guys?
Well, I'm very excited once again because this is another bug meta, and bug is my favorite type. And I've secretly been paying Matthew Brewer and the meta development team for the last 6 months because I love the bug types and I want the meta. Do you think Crustle being at 42% in our first month back was a coincidence? No. I recently built a Crustle just before Luna. I needed usage out of that. And then you look at Brawler. Galv was really... It was a sleeper pick, but it was still good. You look at Glacial Cup, Beedrill, one of the best safe swaps in the entire game. Guardian Cup, Galv still in the top 10 despite Steelix being on every team. You've got Obsidian. Everything that was meta was a bug. Escav, Fortress, Galv. And now the Firefly Cup, where it will all come together and everyone's team will have a bug on it. I'm so excited for this cup.
It's even named after a bug.
It's true.
Exactly.
Callum, I'm gonna do a shameless little bit of plugging for another YouTube channel, but go and search Young's monotype Nuzlocke, because I think he might be the only person in the world who loves bug types more than you.
I think I've watched that video. Actually.
It's a really good my view on Firefly, so I'm very hit and miss with the restricted type cups, like Nemesis. Having something where you have to pick one of a select number of Pokemon as slot 1, slot 2, even if you think all the way back to like Voyager in season 1, where it was restricted based on region for slots 1 to 6. I tend to struggle a little bit more in those metas because the team building for me, can feel quite restrictive. I'm more of a classic Silph Cup kind of player where I enjoy building a core out of a team that I feel covers a lot of things and then complementing it with my remaining picks. Whether that's a safe swap option, whether that is something that will break different cores up or something like that. But I'm more excited about Firefly than I have been about Nemesis, in spite of the fact that Nemesis has been a really positive month for me.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of excited to kind of go back to to a bit of a simpler kind of meta. I think in many regards, I've always been kind of on the fence about some of the more restrictive type, like whitelist type metas like Brawler, for example, or forced choice ones like Nemesis. Although apparently I seem to do quite well in them, so who knows what I bloody think. So yeah, I'm kind of interested to see whether just looking back on a bit of the history of the development of this one, from what I understand, from what information I've received. Apparently, it was a plan to kind of revisit almost like Jungle Cup and with elements of, I think, Sorceress potentially or something like that. So it's kind of combining things, but also with obviously the new things that have come out. Those metas change quite massively. So for someone like me who's only been playing Silph since season 3 anyway, it's quite.
It has a feel of jungle, doesn't it?
Well, my one of my first teams ran Magnezone and Vigoroth, and looking back into my Jungle Cup history, you'll see that I ran both Magneton and Vigoroth in that particular cup. So yeah, it does feel very much like that.
Some things change, some things don't. Some things get bigger.
One evolved,
like a spaceship,
into a shadow.
Like that show Firefly, which went on for a long time, right?
Yeah, that carried on for,
right?
for many seasons. Actually, it ended up as a comic series, didn't it?
I think so. Potentially.
They did the series, and then they did the movie to help tie it all off, and then it ended up as like a fan-made comic and stuff like that.
There you go, guys. I'm sure actually most people probably wouldn't that being massive fans of the show anyway. But it's always good to remind yourself.
The board game is very good if you get a chance.
There you go. So come to Matthew Brewer's PvP channel and learn all about comic history, fandoms and things like that, but also about board games. We try and provide everything.
What about the other game?
It's a well-rounded chatting show. We chat shit about a lot of topics.
Broad culture. Anyway, yes.
Who's fifth?
Bottom line is quite excited by this. I think there's a lot of potential. But we'll get into it, shall we? So we've got a little bit of a. I decided this time, my time coming back, blah 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 blah, that we would open it with new toy syndrome. So there's something that got released very recently, which I think Alex would really love to tell us about. So
I would like to tell us about this.
Take it away.
So I'm going to start in classic chatting shit fashion with the Pokédex number 760. Additionally, I can tell you that in the anime, the Japanese version of the anime, it debuted in November 2016. It is, of course, Bewear, our favorite pedo bear. Obviously, we have just had a community day for this with Drain Punch as a move. I don't know about you, but I, of course, built one on the day, immediately threw it into Go Battle League in the Retro Cup, found it to be mildly underwhelming in that particular cup, but then I was pairing it as Drain Punch and Superpower because I have slight issues with TMing off an exclusive move. However, I did get 3 PvP versions, and therefore I can choose which moveset I want to use and will TM off Drain Punch off at least one of them. That actually leads me to the first point about Bewear. It has so many different viable movesets. Obviously, as a fast move, you're only really going with Shadow Claw unless you are an absolute mad lad and running tackle. But Shadow Claw is a fantastic move because it walls any potential ghost types that come in. Now, bear in mind, as a normal type, it will already do that. However, with Shadow Claw, it will then be dealing the super effective damage back, taking the double resist damage, and actually, which creates, a very unique situation for a fighting type to cover off Ghost in that particular way. One of the key matchups actually is if you do see it, a Gengar, where you don't actually win the 0-2s. Yes, Phil, you don't actually win the 0-2s, but you do leave it very, very low, which means that you can throw 2 moves, get 2 shields off them, and leave it so low and come out with a 2-0 shield advantage and a bit of farm on the Gengar, which feels really good for your fighter to be able to do that. Obviously, things like Obstagoon would be able to do that as well. Obstagoon would probably do a lot better with Night Slash. However, it sets it better up for an energy management style of cup. Next thing to move into is obviously the charge moves. So I briefly touched on Drain Punch. I don't think that is the move here. I think you're better off with Superpower because Superpower deals a lot of damage. Lickitung, possibly one of the bulkiest Pokemon in this cup. with the exception maybe of Chansey, and obviously Greedent is very bulky, but you've got these bulky normal types that are sat around. Superpower does a lot of damage to those. Go and have a look, see how much Superpower from a Bewear does to a Lickitung, because it's a lot more than you think, and it's quite fun. It actually leaves it more or less in Shadow Claw downrange, which, considering it's a normal type, that's pretty good. Just looking at some of the shielding scenarios, so in the one shields against the meta, you're talking a 55.6%. Against the entire meta, so bear in mind that's a condensed PvP meta compared to the entire meta, it is a 69.8%. Nice. That's a pretty decent scenario in the one shields. Bear in mind that is with Superpower, obviously, and a Stab Stomp. One of the few times where Stomp might actually be a usable charge move in PvP. In the two shields, it goes slightly worse against the overall meta, against the condensed meta, sorry. It drops to 50%. Bear in mind that a lot of these will be with a Stomp bait and landing a Superpower. One of those key losses there is actually Vigoroth, which it will technically beat in the one shields by going Stomp then Superpower, but it will lose in the two shields because Vigoroth is a monster. It is actually quite a bad loss in the two shields, so you do have to be aware of that. Against the full meta, though, in the two shields, it's a 66% win rate, which gives you a lot of playability in terms of any anti-meta picks that people might pick. So it's slightly more anti-meta than meta, but it covers off why it creates the reason of why it is a meta Pokemon. Just a couple of ones that it's worth having a look at is Lickitung, Alolan Sandslash, and Alolan Graveler, all of which are fairly good in terms of the meta in general, but also just lose to Bewear, and there's not a lot of playability in any of them. There you go. That's Bewear.
So why Stomp instead of Payback?
In terms of having a neutral stab move that will generally hit anything for neutral damage. Payback is just that little bit more energy requirement, which then means that it's just a little bit harder to reach on a regular basis. Your then bait move becomes Superpower, which means that if you're having to bait, you're having to debuff yourself, which just feels really bad.
Yeah.
There could be an argument made for it, and as I say, when I was running it in Go Battle League, I was running Drain Punch and Payback, which did work to a certain extent, but again, it's one of those things. But with all the different moves that it does have, it could be a Swiss Army knife where you throw it in and you go, okay, what does this team actually need? Do I need to cover something with Payback? Well, in that case, I'll run Bewear. Let's say I'm running Vigoroth alongside it, where I'm taking your shields with Vigoroth, and then I'm able to nuke you with Payback.
It's almost like a tankier Zangoose. Zangoose is fun. I really like Zangoose. I just wish it was a little bit tankier. So
it is surprisingly bulky. Although picking up a fighting type adds stab onto Superpower, it does also add a few weaknesses to, for example, Fairy and Psychic, which, Zangoose obviously doesn't take anything particularly well. I'm sure you've matched a Zangoose up against, say, a Hypno and seen how much it does. It should be a good matchup for Zangoose with Shadow Claw and Night Slash, but Confusion just does so much damage that when you get into the two shields, it doesn't matter what it's got, the Confusions have ripped through it. Whereas Bewear still picks up that, but then doesn't have the quick move to come back. So it's a little bit less attacky than Zangoose, but more bulky, and it does stick around quite a lot.
I quite like it. It's one of these that we're talking going back to the issue of Stomp. I actually think it's not actually that bad a move in this meta. Well, it looks at it like, there was a few steel types around, obviously some rock types as well. But other than that, I mean, normal's one of those types.
You're hitting Superpower against them, though, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
So. I'm building up to double Superpower and going, right, okay, are you shielding both of these? No? All right, you're dead. It doesn't matter.
Precisely, and it's like one of those things. So, there's not a lot of like, again, normals are always one of those weird like offensive types where obviously you're not hitting anything for super effective, but there's lots of things that are going to take neutral from it as well. And obviously being part normal, you're getting your stab bonus. And in terms of energy and damage, Stomp is actually just a clone of the elemental punches. So when you put it in that context, I think actually it becomes a lot more appealing. And on another note, there's, I mean, talking about payback, yeah, there's a Swiss Army knife thing, but there's also a lot of stuff in this cup which I think you're going to not want to necessarily want to have a dark type attack against, not at least without stab. Because I mean, obviously you've got your goons. There's like
any poison dark,
Toxie, yep, any poison dark. You know, Heracross being could be a big thing here as well. It just feels like
what's the play against Frostlass then?
You can rely on Shadow Claw as the majority of the damage. What I would probably recommend is throw a Stomp and a Superpower, because even though it is resisted, it's only one stage resisted, but Superpower still does a fair chunk. I haven't actually looked at the sims for that one, so let's pull that one up.
Just look. So actually, you only just lose if you don't even throw a move. So if you can, I think you can just throw in the ones. You can. You lose if you throw straight Stomp, so you do have to throw a Superpower, but I think if you can even just throw straight Superpowers, potentially. Yeah, you can just go straight Superpower.
Yeah, it's about landing the Superpower. Superpower does 37%. In shielding scenarios, you will win, and it's because the Shadow Claw does the damage it needs to do. So yeah, as long as you're able to keep it honest, it's all good. The Stomps though, yeah, they do considerably less. They do about 15%, but they will add up. If people are going, oh, it's a normal type, I don't need to shield, they will add up, and the Shadow Claws will take them down fairly well.
You can win twos going straight Stomp, which is quite funny.
That's the point. So if they choose not to shield them, you take them down faster, and then you've got to move, say, a Superpower. But that's the other thing. Superpower and Stomp are the same energy cost. So you reach both of them at the same time. So people never know if it's a bait or if it's a nuke. And that creates like a really like mind gamey effect with it. And then it's about how you use it. You can use it as a lead, where you're superpowering and dipping, like Malamar gets used a lot. You can use it as a switch. I wouldn't like to use it as a switch. What I'd rather do is sack the lead, bring it in, be able to superpower and dip, and sort of play this hit and run game with it. But wherever you put it, you can use it as a closure as well, because I'm sure we've all been in situations where you've got a Pokemon on the other side with superpower, and it's late game, you've got no shields left, and you're just like, 2 superpower, kill me here. I can't handle this. Like, I haven't got anything for this. Jake did this to me in gym. He had Malamar against my Wormadam, and he got to the second superpower just as I got to the Bug Buzz to KO him, but it didn't have a shield. So it was enough to KO me, and it was like, okay, right, that's still enough. But yeah, I think Bewear's good. It's got some problems with
Bewear.
It's got some problems with the meta. Vigoroth is annoying. Obstagoon is obviously annoying, but if you land a superpower on either of them, it doesn't matter how annoying they are.
I suppose then actually just thinking about what things that you beat with it, and actually just thinking about normal types of superpower, then why would you potentially use
Snorlax?
Yeah, over Snorlax in a cup where there's not much bulk? What's the advantages of one over the other?
For starters, stab on superpower. For seconds, you are always running Body Slam and superpower on Snorlax. You're never realistically running Earthquake or Outrage or Heavy Slam in Great League.
Or Skull Bash.
You're always
Or Skull Bash.
Or Skull Bash. Sorry, I always forget it learns Skull Bash. You're never running any of those in it because Lick does not get there fast enough. It takes so long to get there. It's usable in Ultra League where its bulk can get there. It's usable in Master League where its bulk can allow it to get there. But in this, you're better off running in Great League. You're generally better off running Munchlax. But stab on superpower will make a massive difference. Then there is the advantage of Shadow Claw over Lick. Now, Lick obviously being a 1-turn, I would generally rather a 1-turn move. However, Shadow Claw is widely regarded as one of the best moves in the game. It's behind counter, but everything's behind counter. Shadow Claw is very high up there in terms of most efficient moves and generally just pain in the ass to deal with. So in terms of that, it comes down to a bit of a moveset thing, as well as overall bulk. Looking in that, let's just have a look. So yeah, it's about 30 HP less defense, but significantly higher attack. So you're talking 22 higher attack, more or less, which isn't inconsiderable, especially when you think that Shadow Claw itself is going to be dealing damage. And if you hit an attack breakpoint on something, you can potentially turn it from X number into X -1 or X -2, because Shadow Claw will be dealing that extra point of damage along the way.
Just having a quick look at the differences between them and give me some food for thought. Viewers, go and have a look at it for yourself. I'm not giving any more secrets away, but some interesting things to consider, I think. Normals could be pretty big. I think normals are always going to be big in this type of meta, to be honest, considering what normals are available.
Having a normal that can beat other normals is really big. So it's one of those things that I always
did you say really big?
Yeah. But this can be big in the ones. It can't beat it going straight superpower, which is a bit of a pain. But if you land the superpower first, you're gonna KO it in the zeros. So if you get to it, you could go stomp and they could shield, and then you get to land the second one. You either take 2 shields and leave the Vig, fairly healthy to be fair, but enough that you can then come in with something else, tank a body slam and be happy.
35% from a stomp if they don't shield the stomp as well is not too bad. It's like, skip damage.
The problem is that Shadow Claw doesn't do anything. If I was a big, you may remember the conversation when they announced Bewear. I was talking about running it as triple fighting move, where it was like, okay, here's counter drain punch in close combat, for example. They dropped it to superpower, fine, but if you gave it counter, Bewear would be a beast.
So would Ledian. Sorry.
I remember that conversation.
Right, okay, guys. So does anyone else have any thoughts on Bewear? Are you thinking about running it now? Is it something that you think you can see slotting into your own team builds?
I originally
running Snorlax now.
Which is ironic because I originally had in my head that if I wanted to run a Bewear, I'd just run Zangoose. But I think you may have convinced me otherwise. I didn't take part in the community day. I was stuck inside, nowhere to go.
I might have to trade you, dude.
But I don't know. You may have just convinced me because I started looking more into it, and I think it's more that just in Open Great League that Zangoose has a slight more promise against Bewear. But you're right, in this meta, it does seem that it just about pips it in about everything. Even in the Sims, even in rankings, which I was very surprised when I saw that Bewear was above Zangoose, because I don't know, I just never perceived Bewear as being better, but it is a lot more consistent.
Zangoose has a little bit of a problem in this particular meta when Night Slash isn't as effective.
Yeah, exactly. It
exactly the reasons why you wouldn't want to run Payback. So therefore, your best move realistically is close combat, and
Dig.
I don't want to keep on throwing close combats. But I mean. I would if you gave me 1,000 energy, I'd just keep on tapping close combat. But if I have to actually battle and keep on playing close combat, or like start from a standing start, it's a horrible feeling to have. Sorry, the dog is now getting very needy of attention.
That's actually an instant way to get way more kind of viewers and subscribers is dog content. We already know that.
He's already buggered off now.
Oh.
next time he stop, I'll do this. I'll stop the stream and I'll have him here.
I want to see apples.
War games, comics, dogs. You got it all here, guys. You've got it all. Yeah. Any more comments on Bewear? No?
Nope.
Well, I have none. I mean, I have some Bewear because I brought some. So I played the day. Begrudgingly.
I think it's one where it's worth having a look at, even if it's not something you end up running. It's something that you should be aware of.
Beware of.
Beware.
We also cover jokes on this channel now. Thank you, guys.
Dad jokes. I'm good at dad jokes.
Love, you're not pregnant, are you? No, good.
Oh,
uh,
well, okay.
moving swiftly on. So yeah, that's Bewear. Have a look at it. Be where it could happen. Yeah, so thank you very much for that very thorough and detailed analysis. It's something that I'm going to think about potentially for my build. I don't really know what my build's going to look like at this point. Shock horror. But let's move on to something that I think a lot of PvPers will have a lot of familiarity with. And there's also a lot of love for this particular pick, I think, in the community in general. So, Callum, please introduce us to your pick.
So, for my pick today, I've chosen number 407, Roserade, which is one of the evolutions introduced in the game Platinum for Generation 4. And personally, I had it on my run through in Platinum. It was the first ever game, but I ever maxed out the clock on. I had 999 hours, and then it set itself to 99 minutes because I overran the clock and broke the in-game clock cartridge. So that was very fun. But anyway, I digress. I believe Roserade has a really important value here, and that's fire type coverage. Because when you go and look through the ones that have it, it's mostly just hidden power users, and then Litleo and Pyro. And Litleo and Pyro, especially Litleo, will all have their own place in the meta as being very hard Frostlass answers. And Frostlass, of course, every Silph player knows Frostlass will come if it's available, because people just love is it the one up shield advantage that Frostlass just steamrolls any meta through?
It's just Frostlass being Frostlass.
Give Frostlass a shield advantage and it beats everything.
It's like Hypno. Yeah, give them the opportunity, they'll just run a Hypno.
My personal queen of this cup is Roserade, purely because of how high of an attack that it has to hit people with that weather ball, and it often doesn't feel like it's a non-stab move when you take it on a mon, because it's got incredible damage per energy for such a short charging move, and you've got Bullet Seed and Poison Jab, two very fast charging moves. Or if you want to run Razor Leaf, which it does have some niche wins with, I believe it has the potential to Razor Leaf down a Frostlass with a sneak, as does Shadow Victory Bell. But I'm not running Shadow Victory Bell. Don't talk about it here. No, I really think this is obviously another meta where bugs are going to be very prevalent. Galvantula looks extremely good here. I think Galvantula looks good in almost every meta. And Roserade does have Galvantula win cons. It's more consistent with Poison Jab, but I'm personally leaning much more towards Bullet Seed here for that fast energy generation. And also because of the fact that Frostlass will be tending to be on a lot of teams. For the secondary choice of charge move, I've gone with Leaf Storm. I always badger on about how much I love Leaf Storm over Grass Knot. Grass Knot is slightly more dependable with the fact that it doesn't debuff your attack and doesn't worsen any of your other matchups. But I just love the raw power of Leaf Storm. Once you show it, it's very good at scaring your opponent into shielding unnecessarily and can gain you advantage that way. There isn't really a need for Dazzling Gleam here. There are no dragon, or not really any dragon presence in the meta. I believe Sludge Bomb might be a bit unnecessary, as poison damage doesn't seem to be too optimal, but you might find success with it. But yeah, I'm very keen to see what Roserade does in this meta, as it tends to be quite a big sleeper pick in a lot of past metas and then slowly gains usage over time. Usually when Statistan sweeps a tournament 6-0 with it somewhere, when everyone's like, oh, I should add Roserade to my build, which I was guilty of a few months ago, I believe. I can't remember the meta though. I believe it was...
wait, did it have a place in Glacial? Because there was poison types in there, wasn't there?
I do remember seeing one in Glacial. Unless it was...
like some people started running it there. I think I looked at it at one point. I think.
Yeah, because Venusaur was certainly allowed. It has a 1% usage rate in Glacial Cup.
There you go.
That will be the one. Today's random fact about obsolete Silph metas is brought to you by Jan.
It also has a 1% usage rate in Guardian Cup for the following meta, and has a...
Oh, maybe
I thought it was going to have another 1% usage rate in another.
No, I think I saw a fair amount of Roserade and Nemesis.
Yeah,
like it was a real pain. But I'll tell you what, it does not tank Drill Run well from Excadrill.
Doesn't take anything well, to be honest. I think I hit one with a dynamic punch from Poliwrath, and it was just like, that shouldn't be damage.
It's when you can mudshot it down afterwards, you're just like, this feels so good.
So I think, is my game bugged? Anyway, digress. Sorry.
If your game is bugged, get some weatherball fires on it.
I'm sort of running out of steam here, to be honest. I think I could go on and badger on about Sims, but I don't necessarily think that they'll do much justice. I looked at the 0-1 shield for Roserade as well, where Roserade is upper shield, and it had a 90% win rate against meta, and I believe it was a 93% win rate against non-meta.
Interesting.
Which is very interesting.
Here's
But
a
that's
matchup
mostly because of Leaf.
that bothers me about Roserade. Alolan Sandslash. Alolan Sandslash can survive a Weather Ball Fire. It is double super effective from a high attack stat Roserade, and bear in mind Alolan Sandslash is not bulky. Not bulky at all. It's double super effective and it's still tank it. It does 80%, fine. But then you're having to take Ice Punches and Powder Snows back. In the 0s and 1s, it just loses. And bear in mind, that's some of your fire damage that you're trying to deal with to deal with an Alolan Sandslash. Would you be trying to pair it with counter users instead or something like that?
Well, I always feel like you're going to have a counter user on your team in almost any situation where they're allowed, because it's just the whole game is balanced around it. Realistically, I think I was having this discussion just the other night in the gym sort of Facebook chat, and we were talking about how the whole game currently is balanced around fighters because it's got the best fast move in the game, and fast moves are the whole crutch of what this sort of game is based upon.
Tap.
So yeah, tappy tap, fun tap taps. I don't know. I do think it's going to be quite easy to pair it off with a counter user, just because you've got quite a lot of choice with big Toxicroak, even Obstagoon, and then there are a few others as well.
Heracross.
Heracross, that's a big one. I think Heracross is going to be almost, if not just as good as it was in Lunar Cup, and that was a dominating force. It had a 29% usage rate, and keep in mind it's one of those ones which is fairly hard to get a hold of, or at least was at the time that Lunar Cup was around. So almost everyone who had a Heracross would have used it. I certainly would have if I had one at the time. But
Do you have one now, dude?
I have a Heracross. It's a 96% Heracross, which is like a rank 700 or something for Great League. So not terrible.
Sorry,
but...
the point is you have one. I don't
and
need
I'm very tempted to build it for this.
Sometimes it's one of those things where it doesn't really matter what it is, just as long as you've got one, it's going to do.
IVs don't matter until they do.
I feel like Dragouge is one of those mons. Just it either hits a break point against enemy Dragouge or it hits a bulk point against enemy Dragouge, and it's just so good. And
there is no in between. Speaking of Heracross, though, did you know in the ones Roserade actually loses to Heracross as well with Bullet Seed and Weather Ball Fire?
I hadn't looked into that.
Yeah,
that's not too surprising, I suppose.
Is Bullet Seed really where you want to go with this?
That
might be the better play.
I think it's personal preference and how you build your team, because it's one of those things I think is much better in a format like Gym Breakers, where you can choose your team depending on the opponent. I know that's not what we're really here to talk about with Silph at the minute, but I think the same sort of thinking applies, where you can build your Roserade around your team rather than your team around your Roserade per se.
We'll segue into a promotion for Gym Breakers. Go join that. Should I go on to Pogo Raiders as well?
Sponsored by. I had some. I'm a big Roserade fan. I had some. There was a couple of things here that I was just having a quick look at. Is interestingly, despite having Weather Ball Fire, like it loses to Magnezone if you're running Bullet.
Yeah.
But if you're running Poison Jab, you beat it. So
that's a very odd one,
which is ridiculous. I also wanted to say about Leaf Storm being a debuff. I used Leaf Storm Ludicolo in Continentals last year, and to put this into context about, you don't want to really debuff yourself the way that you do with Leaf Storm. In context, Leaf Storm non-debuffed is incredible damage. A debuffed Leaf Storm from Ludicolo at the very least still hits as hard as an energy ball. So it's like, it's not that bad. So if you think it's coming from a Roserade,
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why I tend to gravitate more towards it. I think the fear is if you run something like Poison Jab, there's maybe more of an argument because then it's a move that's
fast
multi-based.
move pressure. So
yeah, but I think with Bullet Seed, you almost always go for debuff. Anyway, sorry, carry on.
I think Bullet Seed's been recommended quite a lot because you look at there's a little bit of steel, not a massive amount, and there's obviously still lots of neutral matches, but there is looking to be quite a lot of rock and a lot of some water, but Lantern being a very big potential option here. There's a bulky water type which we all love. The Alolan Rocks, who might also see a surge in usage later in the month with Community Day. Hashtag not sponsored. What else have we got in terms of like stuff that doesn't want to see grass move damage? I don't know, probably other stuff. I'm not bothered to look it up. But anyway, so yeah, I can kind of see it, that energy generate neutral against Crystal, I guess, rather than being resisted, because Crystal might be something that rears its ugly head again, as always. Is always there. Bloody Crystal. Anyway.
But yeah, Roserade doesn't like taking smackdowns. So
No. Or even Fury Cutters, really. It's still chunks there.
What we've learned here is that Roserade doesn't like taking damage, which is a terrible thing for PvP, but it's very strong. So, yeah.
And don't get it locked against a confusion user. Just
don't get it locked against anything. Always give it the option to escape.
Throw one poison jab and run away.
Bye.
Then come back in later and throw another.
Phil, thoughts on Roserade?
Yeah, I think fire damage is good. I just think even Wormadam Trash, you're going to be dead before you reach one. I don't know. I prefer a little OE, to be honest.
I think I always really like. I think fire damage is going to be huge here. I think I'd agree that maybe it's more of a utility mon. It's one of those ones that's going to be on your 6 that you might not use all that often, but that one matchup where it's going to be good, you're going to be grateful that you've got it, because it could. I mean, looking at the meta and how people maybe building their teams, it could very easily be a case of like people choose from 3 or 4 all the time, and then have those 2 utility mons that saying like, oh, these will cover these problems, but these core 3 or 4 will get me through otherwise. I mean, of course, I could be completely wrong.
I think one pro for it is people are going to be picking your fighters. So you've got an out there because obviously resisting the counter damage, being a poison type. You've got the other group like Magnezone, the A rocks. Whether you're actually throwing the weather balls, that Magnezone, or whether you throw in Leaf Storm at the rocks. Okay, I can see how it can be like a little core breaker between the main 2.
Could also be a case.
It feels like an anti-meta pick. Like it feels like something you pick if you want to break a meta team, but it doesn't necessarily feel like something that will help you win against other non-meta teams, if that makes sense. So it's almost like if you start the month with it and you're running against before the meta's fully formed and you're running against anti-meta teams and stuff, like that's not really going to work. But if you go into a tournament specifically knowing that it's all meta, Roserade might have like quite a unique spot there.
Another one that I actually thought about it is, because we talked about the power of Roserade in short bursts and what it can do. I mean, it might even be a mon that you put on your team because you're going to build a strategy around maybe just always having some level of shield advantage, because those are moves that you, in many regards, you're going to have to respect, because there's a lot of mons here who bulk is not really a thing here altogether. And I mean, even the bulky things don't want to take a Leaf Storm, really. So I mean, it could also be one of the things like, right, Roserade's job is just to get shields, and I don't really care what else it does. And then you're playing on the back foot with 2 mons, but you've got the shield advantage. And
pair it with Bewear with superpower. Alpha shields.
There we go.
Good choice.
We always try and build
and Frostlass, that'll get you shields.
Oh god, yeah. That'll win if you keep them.
Yeah, it's an interesting mon. A mon that resists counter but still doesn't like being hit by counter.
It does have win cons against Vig in the 2 shields. So actually, if you switch and they switch in a Vig, for example, you're generally fairly safe in the 2 shields going straight Weatherball Fire, although you will have to land a Leaf Storm towards the end of it. But bear in mind, if you landing weatherball fires along the way, it may or may not switch that around. It can win in the ones, it can lose in the ones. It's very dependent either on fast move or on energy. But it's one of those things that can shut down Vig as a safe-ish swap. So if you could potentially lead something that is weak to something that Roserade beats, bring in the Roserade, they bring in the Vigoroth automatically, and then you just retain the switch and you can RPS somebody in the back line. Could be a potential way to use it.
We all love RPS strats.
Oh, yeah.
We love them. Totally skill-based game.
I mean, I've just outlined the way that it could be skill-based RPS.
Just tap, 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 tap. Yeah.
I've got to run triple charm. What you on about?
Perfectly skilled game. Yeah. Any other thoughts on Roserade?
I like it. I think it's got a place to attack a meta, but I wouldn't call it meta in and of itself. But I think I wouldn't want to use it early in the month, but later in the month, like you get to midway, maybe 3/4 of the way through the month, that's where I'd be bringing Roserade, and the meta is formed properly, and that's where I'd be attacking people with it.
Yeah, no, completely agree. That's exactly, well, it wasn't, you've definitely got a more in-depth analysis than what I was thinking. But yeah, I just think that Roserade is going to be something which will rise over time. At least that's how I perceived it. We're bringing it on today, and I'm just excited.
So what you're saying is Roserade might bloom as the month goes along?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think, the meta is going to come to its aid.
That was bad.
Bad puns.
Enough about Roserade. We're going to be talking about... Hey! Terrible as well. Don't forget to subscribe. Yeah, thank you very much.
Notification bell.
Get the little bell going there and all that.
Yeah, all the little stuff.
Those little touches that. Anyway, so thank you very much.
What can you guys see talking about clicking my little bell? Oh, right.
Whoa.
We were talking about Bewear earlier. I mean, come on, it's all in the notion of making people aware.
Whelping bell.
Whelping bell.
Welcome to Chatting Shit After Dark.
I think I'm too young for this stream.
It's too hot for YouTube. Anyway.
This is YouTube after the watershed. What?
Anyway, right. Let's move on. So yeah, we've had new toy syndrome, a classic Silph pick. So I think it would be remiss for me as a host here to come along and not have one of my favorite features of anything that I've ever done. And by that I mean just appearing on this particular YouTube channel doing nonsense, and that would be what I like to call XL Corner. So you've had the fun community daemons, and now here's something a little bit funny and weird. But actually, Phil will be going first in this particular segment. So I'll hand it over.
Yeah, me. I actually have one of these, and if anyone's a friend of mine, Pokemon girlfriend, they know that I'm currently best buddied mine, because it's rank 2, maxed out at CP 1500. It's Pokédex number 88. It's the Kanto form of Grimer. So I like things that are purple. It's my favourite colour. Yeah. My favourite chocolate's Whisper.
I was just about to point out it's matching your hoodie.
It is, isn't it?
The content weekend.
Oh no, Gengar has a nose!
Gengar has a toe! Gengar.
I swear, if your Gengar licks me with that Whisper, I'm out.
I thought you were about to put that Whisper just a little bit lower, and I was very scared. But
for more top quality content, please join my OnlyFans.
Wrong gym.
Hey, that was the wrong faction.
Oh dear, my stand's gone. My stand's gone.
Anyway, Grimer.
Oh yeah, Kanto Grimer, yeah. I might have to actually hold my phone. Yeah, Kanto Grimer. I mean, to be honest, as soon as I saw ground types were banned, I was like, right, get me some ground type coverage.
Mud slap.
So I might actually mud slap it instead of poison jab, to be honest. Because if you look at like things that are shaping up in the meta, like Magnezone, Alolan Graveler, or Golem, whichever you prefer. Me personally, I'm more of a Golem kind of guy because of the wild charge option. It's going to be fun. I'm looking forward to the next
other Grimers. Mudslap will slap through them as well.
Yeah. Any poison type, any electric type. I like the fact that there's ground type move that I can use. I mean, you could just poison jab and throw the mud bomb. Poison jab, throw the mud bomb. Poison jab, throw the mud bomb.
Not as fun.
Doesn't beat Magnezone.
Say what?
Mudslap actually flips the Magnezone matchup.
Come again.
Poison jab doesn't beat Magnezone.
Oh, poison jab doesn't. Yeah,
Nope.
that's fine. That's fine.
Mudslap has to be on it to beat Magnezone, which is mental.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Because that's what you're going for.
That's what I'm going for. I mean, what fight is everyone going to use? Everyone's going to go Toxicroak, aren't they? Yeah.
Yeah.
Rah. It's going to use Toxicroak, so Mudslap. Oh, you shield that mud bomb and then just Mudslap it down. Fine. So there's lots of mons that are looking. I'm only asking because I don't know. You could probably tank one. I'm sure one of you will run a sim.
I think you have to shield it.
Yeah,
Mud bomb from Toxie does 52%.
Oh, you can take about 12 counters, right?
Also, Grimer loses in the ones to Toxicroak. It wins the zeros and the twos.
Is that with poison jab?
No, that's with Mudslap.
That's with Mudslap.
Oh wow! Oh
and
wow!
It's so
Okay.
slow.
I'm sorry, I'm poking holes in your ship already.
Oh, wait, no. There's a way to change this though, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, correct move timing, lad.
That's optimized move timings.
The
new PC Poke update.
There's another way around it, but we'll get to that. Let Phil talk.
Sorry, carry on.
Well, I'm just saying that there's quite a few mons that are coming forward, like Toxicroak, Magnezone, Alolan Golem, Graveler, whatever. Any psychic type, any poison type. Litleo's going to be everywhere.
Ooh.
Just saying, it takes that down as well. I just think it's. I don't know. It's like if a team of 6 has got 3 or 4 of these mons on, then just have at them. Drapion.
Yeah,
Drapion.
I was about to say.
Yeah, Drapion's really good
Tank.
to pin against.
Skuntank. All the poison darks, yeah. The poison darks, yeah.
Even Sandslash. Yeah. I'm assuming you beat Sandslash.
You get pretty close.
You should probably beat Alolan Sandslash.
You get pretty close.
It does beat Bewear, by the way. In the ones, anyway.
As it should.
You get pretty close to Drapion, even with poison jab. To be fair.
So yeah, I mean, you could use it with poison jab. You could Buggy, Poochie.
Hey!
Alex, talk.
He has decided to. He completely ignored me. He was just like, no, I'm gonna call up that. It's his bedtime now. If I were to go over there and try and move him, he would kill me. I'm not even joking.
Doggo deserves it.
I wish I was. No, it's his nighttime.
Good night, Poochie.
Right, carry on.
Yeah, I just think quite a lot of the mons that are coming up to top at meta. I think it's got shouts, it's got play.
Having something that just hard answers Magnezone is a great one. Because it's top ranked Pokemon. You've got Magnezone, you've got Shadow Magnezone. Having Mudslap, which is double super effective damage, it is going to take 4, 5 Mudslaps to KO.
I was thinking 3. I was thinking 3 to the Shadow. But yeah, probably 4 or 5. Yeah.
So it's actually the Shadow is an 891 in the ones, which is just absurd when you think about it. Just having a look, it does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It takes exactly 5.
Right. So
it does reach the wild charge.
Yeah. Right. Well, here's what I was thinking. Right, because there's going to be other mons. There's going to be other mons that beat it. So either you bench press, you use it for bench pressure, so they're not bringing the Magnezone. Summons like Crustle, Frostlass are a little bit freer. Or because of what it loses to, you bring in something else that Crustle or Frostlass could do very well against. I don't know. I'm just throwing out a couple of pairs there for you.
So some of its worst matchups are some of the flyers in the meta. Like, big example, Noctowl and Pidgeot. They are the hardest losses for it. Golbat is number 3. Those are sort of the big ones. But those 3 would all lose to Crustle and Frostlass if you wanted to pair it that way. You do go down the route of a bit RPS, but that would make a fairly decent little core that you could just go, okay, here you go. Here's 2 Pokemon. How are you going to deal with this?
That's why I'm probably more tempted to go Frostlass, to be honest. Yeah,
no, I like Frostlass a lot, especially because it's got all of those other kind of positives. Interestingly enough, though, it doesn't pass the Vigoroth check.
Doesn't beat Doesn't beat Goon either.
That's a little bit. Obviously, we've talked a little bit about Toxicroak. Interesting.
Would Poison Jab beat
Toxicroak?
Poison Jab not beat Toxicroak, but it beats Vig and Obstagoon.
Interesting.
So you've got to make the decision of if you want to go Mud Slap for the Magnezone, or if you want to go Poison Jab for the fighter.
I was also
my opponents will never know.
They won't until game 1 when you reveal it.
I'm not bringing it till game 3. Yeah.
At which point it's not done its job anyway.
Now, dear viewers, some of you may or may not know I'm quite a fan of the Grimer family. So this is something I've looked into quite a lot as well. So what I was saying is that there's a potential solution to some of this Toxicroak problem if you want to go down the ground damage route. One way to convincingly win that matchup is to run a Shadow Grimer. That dominates it.
That would in fact do it. I
don't have one of those.
Just if you have the option to build a Shadow one, it might be a thing. So looking at it, Grimer is a complicated beast in terms of you do have these 2 very different variants in terms of like you can go down the classic poison route, and poison damage seems to be like very, very big here. But you can also do, catch people off guard, perhaps with the Mud Slap variant. And if you actually look at them side by side, even including with the Shadow versions, it's a really interesting picture in terms of like, it definitely shows there's some shared wins, but it is a question of utility. What do you want your Grimer to do? And so it is, maybe if you're worried about flyers, Poison Jab is one. Or if you're more worried about some of the electrics, then maybe you go with Mud Slap. Although interestingly, Shadow Grimer Poison Jab can beat Lantern, whereas the regular version can't. But regular Mud Slap beats Lantern, whereas the Shadow version doesn't, which is also quite interesting.
And Luxray is an issue, isn't it?
Luxray beats all of them, unfortunately.
Psychic Fangs is just slightly annoying, to be honest.
Talking about bulk, though, when talking about either the Shadow versus non-Shadow, Greedent, only the Shadows of both version move sets can beat it. The regular versions have very dicey 490 type, so timing is a bit of an issue there, whereas the others not so much. Lickitung, only Shadow Poison Jab can beat that one reliably, which is interesting. Not because Lickitung is good. I think most of us are probably saying that Lickitung is not that great here, potentially. Don't do it. But people will use it.
Why do I feel like you were looking at me then? Jeez.
But this isn't my mod. I really like Grimer. Like anyone who knows me knows that I love Grimers and stuff like that. So I've looked at it a bit. So no, I'm gonna stop now. But I think it's I really like it. So yeah, now I'm gonna be quiet.
Definitely try before you buy.
How does one try before buying a level 50 Pokemon that you have to put in?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, like, okay, that's a poor choice of phrase. Try out before you definitely stick it in a team.
Don't just sign up to the first tournament you see with a Kanto Grimer being like, yeah, this is gonna work. Phil told me it was great.
Phil said
Yeah.
Grimer was great. Kanto Grimer is amazing. Let's go.
That's all I need
Yeah,
to do.
let's just forget Golbat exists.
I mean,
What?
so far, my team is Bewear, Roserade, and Kanto Grimer. I don't need anything else, right?
Why are there so many confusion users?
Yeah. Yeah.
We here at Chatting Shit are not responsible for any damages and liabilities you may have to your win rate.
We do, however, find it hilarious.
True.
Ha ha ha. Sorry.
So the other one's better than Yan, yeah?
I was about to say, can we segue this and say, so if you're struggling with confusion users, Jan, is there an answer to this?
Potentially. I mean, does anyone else have any thoughts about original recipe Grimer?
It's
I
the
feel
one
like
I have
we've
not
batted a lot
built.
of shit about it.
It's got the better design. Actually, I quite like the evolution of
I
Alolan
think it's
Mark
got the
more
better
than Mark.
shiny.
but- Yeah.
I like the rainbow one. I like the rainbow
Yeah.
one.
Shiny is pretty nice, to be fair. So
I like the Kanto shiny
still haven't got
over
it
the Alolan shiny, but I like
really?
the regular.
No,
over Kanto.
no, Alolan shiny for me.
Of course, it's all purple, isn't it?
they're both great shinies, let's be fair. But yeah, let's say it's an option that is perhaps not open to everyone, particularly the shadow version, because that was only available for a very limited time anyway, and getting good IVs on that would be a nightmare. It's also very expensive, 360 XL roughly, depending on, that's probably around about 590,000 dust, so not cheap, but could be a lot of fun. I mean, we just had a Grimer event anyway, so if you wanted to run the regular version, and that's still got a lot of flexibility, you know, it's there, and you know, you'll have a lot of fun. There it is.
Hey.
But yeah, no, I mean,
Just to 1493.
ooh,
Nice.
And I've TM'd off frustration.
That's always good.
Oh yeah,
It's 600,000 Stardust, and I have 32.
ooh, just 32 or 32,000.
32,000.
Oh.
I haven't gotten down to double digits again for a while.
I did a little while ago.
So yeah, everyone, I think we just have to be aware that Phil loves a Grimer, and oh hello, and who knows what moveset he's actually going to run. He's a dicey character. Watch out. But yeah, we mentioned confusion users, and yeah, probably I guess it would be a nice segue into what
I thought it was a good segue.
It was a good segue. So I am also taking part in XL Corner. And in many regards, Phil's done a lot of the work for me. So my pick is Pokedex number 88. It's the sludge Pokemon. It's Grimer, but I'm going with Alolan Grimer.
Well, hello to you too.
Hello.
Hello there.
Hello. So I did a side-by-side comparison of all the different Grimers. And I knew that Phil would be doing a lot of my work for me, so I can keep this fairly short and sweet, really, to be honest. So actually, there's quite a lot of wins that are shared between Alolan and regular Grimer. So why I picked it up in particular is not because I use it quite a lot because I love it, but I think it's kind of like some of the recent move updates we've had with other mons, which have had things like, you know, Ho-Oh with Sacred Fire, and there's been lots of discussions. This will come to a point, don't worry. Lots of discussions around, you know, obviously having a legacy move of Earthquake and Sacred Fire being another legacy move. And if you actually look at the numbers, they're very similar between Sacred Fire and Earthquake. This will all make sense very soon. So one would say, like, oh, does it really matter what you run? Well, actually, yes, because if you're getting the same number of wins, what we have to remember is Sacred Fire has a debuff chance, and that's where we segue into Alolan Grimer, because Alolan Grimer has access to Crunch.
Just one of the most annoying moves at the moment, honestly. I
Fairly
feel like I get the
overtuned.
Crunch debuff against me every single time a Crunch lands.
It's one of the most annoying moves in the game. It gets Stab as well, being Poison Dark type, which means it does take neutral from counter, but it actually doesn't make those matchups that bad, because the Poison Jabs are actually quite good for it. And if you land a Crunch, Stab Crunch is actually really quite powerful. And even if it gets shielded, if you get the defense buff, those Poison Jabs start hurting a lot more. And I think that's the point that I like to make about Alolan Grimer, is that you remove that psychic weakness and make it neutral. because of the dark type, which means it has a much more favorable matchup against the confusion users. So, for example, it beats a Rangaroo, who might be showing up quite a bit. Has a much better matchup with a Wormadam, for example. Still take neutral Bug Buzz, but slow. And Crunch Debuff once again can flip that. It's about the ceiling that is available to Alolan Grimer. I love Kanto Grimer original recipe. I think it's brilliant, and I think there's a place for both on a team because they can actually function in very different ways. But what I really like is that even those matchups which don't look favorable, a Crunch debuff instantly flips it. It's like Drapion, for example. Drapion's numbers don't actually look amazing. If you look at it in the Nemesis Cup, for example, where it's been quite big, it doesn't always look great. But as soon as you hit a debuff, things go wild. Things be wild.
Drapion causes me a lot of problems all the time.
It's an absolute like that. Just if you proc them, like you can change an entire match just off one Crunch debuff, which is just crazy. Some things which I think highlight to me just kind of like the differences. It doesn't need to be a shadow. Well, you can't get it shadow anyway at the moment, but it as it is, it actually beats Greedent straight up, which is quite nice because again people are going to search for bulk in different places. So that's one they might be looking at. It uniquely beats Gengar as well, which could be pretty big over the other one, unless you're running Mudslap. Although I think that can still get dodgy because Gengar is just very fast and neutral shadow punches and regular Grimer. Doesn't beat Heracross because Heracross counters are neutral, but does pick up a much nicer win against the Alolan Ninetales compared to the regular version, and people love their Ninetales. Beats a Rangaroo, has a bit of a closer matchup with Pidgeot, but still loses. What else have we got here?
Did you say the Alolan is better against? Oh, is that with Powder Snow?
It's because it's running Poison Jab almost exclusively, isn't it?
Yeah, because
so as opposed to a Mudslap.
So even with the Charm variant, I mean, you're going to end up with less health because of neutral versus resisted, but you still kind of like dominate it a lot.
Yeah, I thought you were saying that the Alolan Grimer had a better matchup with them both having Poison Jab, and I was a bit confused for a second.
No. But we're talking about bulk and things like that. Okay, so you drop Vig, unfortunately, and you never beating Toxicroak.
You do have win cons against Vig, though. I think the ones are very, very close.
And again, if you proc a defense drop off of poison of the Crunch, and again, it's the potential for things like that. Looking at twos again, we're talking about people trying to find bulk. Snorlax, Alolan Grimer uniquely beats Snorlax, having those resisted licks, which is great. Rangaroo once again. Also, Lickitung has a much better time against Licky, again because of the same reason. Greedent is much more comfortable in twos. And then I think, was there anything interesting in zeros? Because we do love a good zeros matchup. I think it was the same thing. Most of the bulky things fall to it. Uniquely beats Frostlass, of course, as well. That Crunch, just devastating. It hits actually quite hard. I think that's what people don't realize about Alolan Grimer. It does hit pretty hard.
It's a little bit more attack weighted, I believe, isn't it?
Slightly, yeah.
The original, yeah.
Remember that Golbat problem? Beats Golbat in zeros.
Good. Resists everything, doesn't it? Except the wing attack.
Yep. Beats Luxray in zeros.
Good.
Beats Noctowl in zeros.
Oh, that's surprising.
Yep.
It's because Noctowl's big hit at the moment is Shadow Ball,
and
it can't use it, so it has to rely on Sky Attacks.
Yeah, I mean, Sky Attack's a good move.
Yeah, but it takes 2 Sky Attacks to carry the Grimer, doesn't it?
Yep, where you can do it in one.
So 8 paces.
And wing attack's not bad, but sometimes it's just a bit not what you need it to be.
It's one of those things where Grimer just does things just slightly better than Noctowl in that particular matchup. Like the fast move's slightly better, the charge move's slightly better. So yeah, it just beats it that way.
Yeah. But other than that, it does share a lot of wins with Poison Jab Grimer. The wins are obviously a little bit different versus the Mudslap version. But again, I really like it because you could kind of like, maybe if you have the ability to run 2 Grimers, if you amass enough XL, is that you can have them doing that dual functionality and you have very simple.
I'm almost there. 21 more XL number.
But
Rank 1 Alolan and rank 2 Kanto.
But this is the thing that I you know me, I love a good Excel mon. Confusion seems like it could be quite a big thing here. So having a poison type which doesn't take super effective and can hit back super effective is pretty great. And again, the ceiling as a team utility thing, there's so much in this cup which is going to love having the ability to like hit something a little bit harder because something's just got a defense drop, because crunch is the most annoying thing in the world. Other than bubble beam on Mantine.
I think crunch is a little bit more annoying, to be honest. I prefer having my attack dropped than my defense dropped.
Yeah, I suppose it's not, you don't want to get farmed down too much easier. And also crunch hurts a lot more than bubble beam. So
yeah, crunch is a good move before you get the defense drop. It's then just busted when you get it.
But that's why I really like Alolan Grimer. It's you can run it alongside another Grimer to do different things. You can do a lot of the same stuff that Kanto Grimer can do. But there is always that potential to flip a lot more matchups because of the crunch debuff, and just leaving with a crunch debuff can do a lot for the rest of your team as well. So I think its ranking is perhaps, I think perhaps not a little low, but I think it's much lower just because you can't guarantee those debuffs. But I guarantee you there will be matches that you'll win if you use it because you get that debuff. And if it happens, that could be the difference between a silver and a gold, or whatever else analogy you want to use. So I love
gold and the platinum.
The gold and the plat. Yeah, there you go. I love it. I'm always going to talk it up because Grimer gang. But yeah, I'm advocating for Alolan Grimer here as well.
So Toxicroak, probably one of the worst that it's going to face. Yeah.
Yeah. You could say that.
how
Toxicroak tends to be though.
How we pairing it then? What else? So Toxicroak.
Golbat. Double poison.
Not Tal or Pidgeot. Why not run Pidgeot with Feather Dance and Gust?
Oof.
Or Wing Attack if you've got the other legacy move.
I do have that. But if you're running, so let's say you're running something that debuffs their attacks, and then you've got Crunch that has the potential to debuff their defense. Like you could just build a team that just plays off different debuffs just to mess with your opponent.
Yeah, if you want to be a scumbag, sure.
Well, once you tilt your opponent, it's very easy to beat them.
That's very true.
And
See that
Jan,
time
I'm
and
sure,
time
is
again.
very used to tilting his opponents.
Maybe.
And being tilted
He
by
makes
his
people.
opponents
He makes
as well.
people quit.
Yeah, exactly. So it's one of those things. But if you're playing to the out of debuff, why not go down that route altogether? But it will also cover off its weaknesses. So let's say you've got Toxicroak, and they have to switch in to counter your Grimer, for example. You switch in with Pidgeot, and you're just like, all right, whatever. I'm just going to gust you down, and then be like, okay, here's a Feather Dance and a Brave Bird. Bog off. You're happy. Do watch out for the dynamic punch on Toxicroak, though. Do not forget that it runs it, because that is going to do a lot of damage to a normal flying type.
Yeah, and might be something that you see a lot in this cup, actually.
Yeah,
have you noticed that
PV
PvPoke's running two different Toxies in its meta-analysis? It's running a Sludge Bomb Toxie and a Dynamic Punch Toxie if you run a Pokemon against the full meta.
Oh, good.
I did catch that, yeah.
I clocked it when we were looking at Kanto Grimer, actually, where it was showing Dynamic Punch over Sludge Bomb. And then against Alolan, it was showing both.
Tell you what, though, I'm not seeing what I really want Sludge Bomb for overall.
Well, that's the point. So I think people will run it because that's always been the moveset on Toxicroak. People have always run Sludge Bomb and Mud Bomb. The only time I've ever run Dynamic Punch on Toxicroak was Boulder Cup.
Toxic Cup as well for me, because it was Wormadam trash.
Yeah. I remember bringing Toxicroak for that. I can't remember if I ran Dynamic Punch on it.
I wasn't
running it in Boulder Cup originally because I didn't have a Medicham, and I was like, Toxicroak will do the same thing, right?
I wasn't playing when Toxic Cup was officially around, but one of the servers I was in, and I think Phil competed in the same tournament as I did the exact same in the Toxic sort of sort of re-meta that they did about
Toxic
it was a
2.0,
year later.
yeah.
That was it, yeah, Toxic 2.0. And yeah, I did exactly the same. I thought there's no reason for me to run a Sludge Bomb here. And the meta looks fairly similar.
Ferrothorn was a little bit more prominent.
Yeah, that's true.
Don't have to worry about Ferrothorn here, though.
I do have a question. Do you think there's... So we mentioned before you can't really try before you buy with the default Grimer. You potentially could with a Alolan Grimer if you want to give Alolan Muck, which operates somewhat similarly, a go. It's not as bulky, slightly more attack weighted, but they perform somewhat similarly. It doesn't have the debuff though.
Yeah,
so it really
it's foul play over crunch, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is a budget version. But do you think there's any benefit at all to running? Yeah, Dark Pulse.
Sorry,
Do you think there's any benefit to running, say, a Snarl Muck, where we might be seeing even more ghosts such as Frostlass around in the meta? Or do you think it's really just the bulk of the debuff chance from the Grimer really sells it?
I feel like this comes back to a point that we made earlier, which is you don't necessarily want to be running a dark type attack here.
Yeah.
The poison might be serving better. Having to run the Dark Pulse is less desirable because at least with Crunch, whilst it still hits, even if it's neutral or resisted, it still hits, but it's got the debuff chance. Whereas with Dark Pulse, you don't even have that. So I think even with it being slightly more attack weighted, it's just overall worse. A lot of what Jan was saying was strengths of Alolan Grimer just aren't there for Alolan Muck, with the exception of the typing and maybe the fast move.
I think if you're going to be looking to try and mimic the functionality, you're probably looking at going down the road of doing Poison Jab, Acid Spray, but you're not hitting anything with Acid Spray really.
No, definitely not.
It doesn't help you really. You get the defense drop, but again, if you're in a Ghost matchup, then you're not. You fire the Acid Spray, but then those Poison Jabs do nothing. Like at least if with the Alolan Grimer, like you might get a defense drop, you might not, but at least they're going to be definitely threatened by the crunch, and it comes a little bit faster as well. So no doubt some people will try and make Alolan Muck work, but I think it's actually the inferior mon here, to be honest, for that particular role. I mean, if you build your team in a different way, then maybe you are just wanting to throw out, maybe you do like a Snarl double poison or something. Why you do that, I have no idea, but there's players will always find a way to make something work in a weird way, but it just doesn't seem to have the pressure that I'd want here, because bulk's not a real big thing and Snarl doesn't hurt. I think like fast move pressure is quite a big thing. I mean, you see all the counter users. Fast move pressure is a thing here, and having that poison jab really helps.
When you've got a lack of bulk, having a fast move that does damage rather than energy generation is going to be a lot better. It's most of the way you could consider Razor Leaf.
Most of the bulk is taking super effective damage from counter as well, which is
why it seems like a bit like a trap.
So I'm running Lickitung, Snorlax, and Greedent, right? Like that's my team.
Excellent.
Bewear.
Incoming. But yeah, I think it's one of those mons that in this particular meta, I think it's hard to emulate. Really, like there has been other cups where you can take that poison dark typing and take another poison dark and do similar things. It's much harder here because it's a very unique set of skills, I suppose. I guess probably the nearest thing you probably go with is maybe Skuntank, but then
I was about to suggest, what about Skuntank?
You have a slightly different stat distribution there, I think.
I-type coverage.
Yeah.
Actually. And the option to go Shadow, I guess. But it doesn't look as cool.
That's very true. Yeah, no.
Of course, the rule of cool applies. The rule of cool.
Currently no shiny available, so no opportunity to flex.
Infinitely worse. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe you go down that road, but I don't know.
You could have a purified one and land a return on something.
That'd be pretty nasty.
Poison jab crunch return.
Yeah, that's true.
I've got Jan thinking now.
That's a very dangerous thing, Jan.
I know, right? I'm setting him up for gym as well. I'm just be like, right, come on, think about this.
Interesting. Maybe might look into it. Anyway, rambled enough. Does anyone have any other thoughts, questions, feelings about Roland and Grimer, or indeed any of the things that we've discussed this evening?
Go bug types.
Yeah, so I think
it.
bug types are going to be everywhere. I think if you don't have a reasonable answer to them, that's where you're going to find issues. And I think that the bug types are actually going to be the major checks for the counter users. So obviously, the only way that you can get bulk at the moment is, unfortunately, a lot of weakness to counter. So kind of counteracting that is a lot of bug types. But most of what we've dealt with has reasonable ways of dealing with bugs. So you think both Grimers have decent ways of handling bugs, be that crunch, be that mud bomb spam or whatever. Although Kanto Grimer's probably a little bit worse against the bugs.
Yeah.
Well, bug resists ground, but so many of the good bugs have a second type which is weak to ground, like Galvantula, like Crustle, like Beedrill. They're all got that secondary typing, so it balances it out.
However, a lot of those have ways of hitting back, but then Roserade obviously with the Weatherfall Fire, and Bewear is probably not so good against the bugs, but Shadow Claw and Stomp will still put in some work, I'd have thought. That just
she bugs.
It seems like the meta is squish some bugs and go from there, basically.
To me, it just seems like where, like, I've said this a few times, bulk is very rare here, or bulk comes with a very big price. I think actually what we would be considering bulk is actually just going to be defined by resistance matchups. Like, it's not bulky mons per se, it's just maneuvering into matchups where you're just not taking as much damage because it's not very effective, unless you're Roserade, where you're made of paper.
Even resisted things. Have you seen what resisted charm does to Roserade?
It's too much. It's way too much from memory.
It's stupid.
So, but yeah, I think it's shaping up to be a very interesting meta, a throwback to the past of Silph for players like myself who are relative newcomers. Really, it's interesting to kind of revisit these ideas and kind of see what's new, and I'm sure for some of the veterans to kind of see what kind of like alterations have been made in the lab, so to speak. But yes, so yeah, I think probably looking at the time and what we've discussed, probably try and wrap things up a little bit. So it leaves me with nothing else to say but to thank my guests for coming on this evening. I really appreciate the analysis, the chat, the banter, all that jazz. It's been great fun, as always, to have you guys here with me. So thank you so much for agreeing to come on. It's been a great pleasure, and hope that we'll be all on voice chat at some point chatting about things.
I'm sure. Thanks for having us, though, Jan.
Yeah,
you've been an excellent host.
Oh, thank you very much. But anyway, to say the least, this is not my series. It is, of course, belongs to Matthew Brewer PvP. So let me just leave you with this. If you like this content, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Say something down below about what you really liked, and tickle the bell. I mean, click the bell to get notifications when there's more content coming. Tell us what you really liked. But without that, good luck. Without further ado, good luck with your team building. Have a great month. I hope you all get golds or whatever you're aiming to do. And until next time, take care and see you all later. So have fun.
Genga.